And we're in. Hello and welcome back to Conversations with My Father, Season 2, Episode 4, I believe it is.
You're quite right.
How are we?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Good.
I should explain to the viewers that you may not recognise me, all of you, because I'm no longer wearing glasses. I saw a great mate this morning in the village who looked at me and didn't recognise me at all. That was Steve, by the way.
Yeah. Steve.
And so I had to explain to him that I'd had cataract operation, bilateral.
Yeah.
And I was no longer having to wear glasses for distance.
Yeah.
Which is great, actually.
Well, you mentioned it last episode that you were having it
done.
You're about to have it done. Is that right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
But they are clearer, your eyes, definitely. I've noticed a difference.
Well, it's interesting. So. I hadn't, but
I'm a big fan of the new weaponry you've got there.
Well, these are just Mum's reading
Oh, they're
glasses.
Mum's? I quite like them.
They're not mine.
They make you look a bit like Dame Edna.
I'm not sure that that's
perhaps
the good look that I want to.
What are you, a welder?
Nurture.
But I think it's a new look, fresh, fresh.
Well, thank you.
There you go.
I'm pleased that it's
like it a lot.
Done, and very pleased with the way that it went. And
indeed, very, very good. Now, for the viewers that are watching on YouTube, you may notice an addition to the proceedings.
The ambiance.
The ambiance. Do you want to explain who that is?
Oh, this is Dad, who's normally just out of shot. But he has been such a... Yeah, I thought it'd be nice for him to join in.
Yeah.
He's been dead now for 27 years.
27, it is. Yes, the same as
27 years. He died exactly the day that Albert was born. So
yeah,
it's a bittersweet moment celebrating Bertie's birthday.
Yeah,
it's getting better and better over the years, but nonetheless, it wasn't a great experience at the time.
No,
but it's thanks to my dear father that I'm here and able to talk to you in I think a relatively well-adjusted way.
Well, it's nice because then the people that are viewing, you can see, so Dad's dad, and me. So it's kind of passed down through the...
Yes.
Derek, Chris and Fred.
Yes.
So there you go. So very... and actually his father was called Frederick, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
So it's Frederick, Derek, Chris.
I should by rights have been Eric.
Eric, yeah. And I'd have been
you
Rick.
You should have been Rick, and your sons would have been Ike.
Yeah.
And then their sons would have been challenged with...
There we go. Anyway, we've also, just to the bottom right-hand side of Derek, there's the little box that people need to...
Yeah, you tell them about
hover over. You've got a bit bored of that, haven't you?
Yeah.
But if you are watching on YouTube, please do subscribe. It's very easy to just hover over that little image of Dad and I, and please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We much appreciate every follower that comes on board. It really helps the growth of the channel. Now, we previously spoke about relationships, which was brilliant, having just spoken about fashion previously.
Yes, which is less brilliant.
And in relationships...
I must just apologise to the viewers, because you put on as the headline for episode 3 of...
I thought it was quite catchy.
What was it? Something relation...
Dating, mating and fornicating.
Yeah, which
good ring to it, though.
Yes, it's alliteratively...
And we covered all 3 topics.
Attractive.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure that I had any real intention to talk about fornication, but...
No, you hinted it when we talk about dating. It's all part of it. But I thought it was very catchy.
Okay.
Did it make you chuckle?
It did.
There you go.
I thought, yeah,
and it might make you click on it as well. So it's all about enticing people in, Dad, and I think we did. It was relevant. So
yeah, all right.
So there you go. Anyway, having spoken about fashion and relationships, for both of those things, you would like to think you need some form of finances for both to flourish.
Yes.
So we're going to try and a little tangent here. We're going to be discussing today. I thought it'd be interesting for you all to know a little bit more about what Dad did career-wise for 30 odd years.
34, yes.
34 years. And the financial advice, and you'll see why I'm saying this in a second. the financial advice you'd give to the younger generation, i.e. my generation and those below me, because it's definitely something I feel we lack. So prior to that, I would just like to ask all of you who are listening and watching to send in some Christmas-related questions that we would like to answer and read out in our Christmas special that we're going to be doing this year. I thought it'd be nice to include and be as interactive as we can with our viewers and our audience. So if you have anything, it can be anything you'd like to ask us, but it's got to be kind of Christmas related. We will read out the best ones in our Christmas episode.
Yes, lovely.
So there we go. So back to today's topic. I would like you to explain, let's go right back to the start, when you first, we don't have to go about your kind of failed accounting, because we've spoken about that in depth, I feel. You were pretty crap at that.
Yeah, I was.
But I'd like to, how did you become a stockbroker? And this is effectively, Dad was a financial or investment manager, but ultimately...
It was known in those days as being a stockbroker. So I would broke, i.e. sell, the idea of certain shares to clients.
Yeah.
And they would either say, yes, buy me some, or no, or sell those and buy whatever.
Yeah.
And
so how did you come about that? How did that...
Well, Mum died in 82.
Yeah.
And that is when I became more aware of investments, because Mum had a relatively
amount of money.
Relatively modest investment portfolio, which Dad had helped her with.
Yeah.
And I inherited that at that point.
You were 22.
22, yeah. And that brought me into direct contact with investments and really the responsibilities that go with that.
Yeah.
There is a responsibility for everybody, actually, not just me, but we're talking specific about me, but not all about me. There's a responsibility upon everyone to understand at least a little about investments and finances and how to plan for your future.
It plays a part in everyone's life,
It
whether
does,
you like it or not.
without a shadow of doubt.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to have an exposure to investments quite early in life. And I thought, this is actually quite fun. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
One of the greatest lessons I learnt before I became a stockbroker was losing my own money. Because you look at you look at recommendations in the newspapers and investment magazines and so on. You think, wow, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I'll have some of those.
Yeah.
And you buy them, and within a year they've gone bust.
Yeah, yeah.
And think, wow, what happened there?
Yeah.
Now, we'll come on to gambling and betting later on.
Yeah, I want to touch on that.
But eventually I said to Dad, look, because Dad's professional role, he was a solicitor in Cambridge, and he looked after investments for people, mostly in trusts, but he managed to do that successfully without being too risky. But I was lucky not only to have some investments of my own, but to have someone who was experienced and could help me understand.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to his stockbroker up in London.
Okay.
And I said, could I go and have a lunch with them and chat about things? And they,
chew the fat.
Again, very good fortune. They happened to be looking to recruit people, graduates. And they were focusing mostly on Cambridge University, which I was not, but we lived there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I put them in touch with Cambridge University and said, could I put my application in at the same time? And I did, and I was one of 3 people taken on out of about 80. applicants.
Okay.
The only one who was not Cambridge University, but Warwick.
Yeah.
That they didn't hold that against me, and
Yeah,
I was the one who spent 27 years with the firm. The other two had came and went within 7 or 8 years.
And this was Car Shepherd's Crossway.
Well, it's Henderson Crossway at the
Crossway.
time. Yes,
Okay, right.
it was.
But then later became Car Shepherd's
Yes,
Crossway. Yeah.
and having failed at accountancy,
Yeah.
this at least was something I knew I was interested in.
Yeah.
And if I could be paid for advising people on matters
Yeah.
to do with investments, then that would be great.
So you were how old when you first started with them?
I was 25.
25. Okay. And straight into working in the city
Yes.
and going about your day-to-day life. Were you
Absolutely.
living in the city at the time?
No.
No.
I moved to London
Okay.
and rented with school friends,
Yeah.
and then bought a little one-bedroom flat in Herne Hill.
Go on.
Crystal
What
Palace.
did you buy it for?
Oh, 14,500.
It's something. Actually, no. Let's touch on it now because
Was it 20? It was around there.
And that was. Go on. Talk me through. What was it? What was the house? Like how many beds? What was
A one-bedroom.
Okay.
It really was small.
Yeah.
So we don't want to get ideas of
No, sure, but
grandiose ideas, but
in where? What area?
it was just off Crystal Palace Parade,
Okay.
Gypsy Hill.
Gypsy Hill. Okay. So the reason I asked that is there was something I was going to come on to later, but it's very relevant now. Is that I heard this back a few months ago. The story of a man who bought a house.
Yeah.
I think it was back in the 60s for
Yes.
£3,000.
Yes.
Now I don't think it was anything special, but it was kind of maybe a two, 3 bed, something like that, in London. I can't remember where it was exactly. Now his annual salary at the time was £1,000.
Yes.
So it's 3 times his annual salary was the
Yes.
cost of the house. That house now is worth 600 grand.
Yes.
So what they're saying is for that same person to buy that house now, they'd need to be earning 200 grand a year.
Yes.
And that puts it in perspective.
Yeah.
And that's just a 600 grand house. If you were to buy it the same way as he did, and
Yes.
for it to be relatively the same,
Yes.
3 times your annual salary.
Yes. I mean, the calculations are slightly more in favour of the purchaser,
Yeah,
but
sure.
nonetheless, the sums are still astronomical.
Yeah. It just makes you realise, and there are only really a handful of my friends that earn that sort of money.
Yes.
So it does, and also really 600 grand in London's not going to get you anything special.
No.
It might get you something, but it's not going to be crazy. But anyway,
No.
we'll come on to that. But I just thought it was quite something
Yes.
to think that sort of how much it's gone up.
Indeed.
Anyway, back to so yeah, you joined when you were 25.
Yeah.
And moved into a nice office environment. Was it something you?
Yes. I mean, I was expecting it to be a little smarter.
Okay.
But of course, in those days, it was a partnership.
Yeah.
So the partners who had gone through tough times as well as good ones had to put in their own money to keep the firm going during the oil crisis years of the early to mid-70s.
Okay.
So they weren't in the business of buying very swanky, shiny offices in a tall building, which the banks were doing.
Yeah, sure.
So I remember when we moved out of Bishopsgate offices in 86, 87, I remember hearing one of the removal men, because we all had to go in and help pack our things away and advise the removal men. And he said, I've been in the removal game for 38 years, and in all that time I've never seen a shithole quite like this.
Okay.
So that brought
Where was
it
he
out.
from?
He was from East London, mate.
East London.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, that brought it home to me that not everyone in London working in finance had smart, shiny offices.
Yeah.
We then did move to a smart, shiny office because we were taken over by a bank,
Yeah, sure.
which was interesting.
And that was then cost. That the transition?
We were still Henderson Crosswaite then. We were taken over by a company called Guinness Marne.
Right. Okay.
And moved to St Mary at Hill, it's still in the city. City's a small area, but it's jam packed with offices.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, that was, and I qualified with the necessary exams to make me an investment manager.
Yeah.
So that all went as well as could be expected. And one of the greatest pleasures of in terms of passing exams in my life was passing the one on how to interpret company accounts, having been such an idiot
at accounting
when it came to accountancy.
Yeah.
But understanding it from the other side was really important.
Yeah.
And the point of working out all these figures, rather than seemingly doing it as an academic exercise, working out how the figures could talk to me and give me information, I thought that was much easier the second time round.
Everyone understands exactly what you did.
Yes.
You were an investment manager.
Yes.
So people would come to you with a certain portfolio, sum of money.
Yes.
That they want to invest.
Yes.
And they want your advice on where to invest it.
Yes.
Ultimately.
Yes. And our role evolved over the years as computers became more reliable and improved in quality. As the trading system in the stock market evolved, individuals were taken out of the equation and things became much more automated. Sure. And although we evolved perhaps kicking and struggling because we liked the way it used to be done, it evolved in the right way.
Yeah.
And our role with it evolved into taking in to our custody clients' investments. They still received all the benefits for them, but it made settlement so much easier. And it was much more secure. People didn't lose share certificates. They didn't send in the ones that were invalid because the company had been taken over. There was so much hassle removed from the whole process. And that took 15, 20 years, actually, and it's still evolving now. But I became more of a discretionary investment manager. So really get to know your clients well, keep in touch with them. They're all, a lot of them became friends because over the years you trusted them.
Of course.
And you could be dealing with 2 or 3 generations of the same family. I could even, and in some cases I did, deal with people throughout my career who were all the time retired. And if you do a good job for them and they trust you, then it's much easier to carry on looking after the next generation who inherit.
So was a lot of your clientele, did they come through word of mouth? How did you build your client portfolio?
Well, a lot of it is dead man's shoes. So somebody retires or they go to a position of greater prominence in the firm, managing, where they are unable to dedicate the same amount of time to their clients as they used to. So I would be asked to take them on and look after them, and that was there were always clients there. And of course, if you did a good job for them, once you get into your late 30s, early 40s, they are truly respecting you and are very happy to pass your details on to someone else, because dinner party talk can often be on investment matters.
I don't know if you're allowed to disclose this sort of stuff, but you don't work anymore, so maybe it's all right. But was there a client who you, or let's say a decision you made that caused someone to lose a big amount of money, or equally gain a huge amount of money? Can you remember any times where you're like, someone came to you and they were like, we want to go for maybe a higher risk investment, and you absolutely nailed it, or on the contrary?
Yes, there are examples of both.
Which I'm sure there always are.
And I think it's important to know that in the investment management world, it was suggested to me recently by a former colleague who I have become great friends with
Yeah.
since leaving Rensburg Shepherds as it became Investec. He said that what we're doing as investment managers is preventing the client doing something stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I can add on to that that if you get it right 51% of the time, above average, you're good at your job.
Yeah.
Now, that means that you can be wrong 49% of the time and still be good at your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are times when months and even years go by when values are not going up.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
And there were the years 2000, 2001, 2002, the market fell 3 years in succession. And that was almost unprecedented and was extremely unpleasant because you just didn't know when things were going to improve. But I did know, and I said to clients, it will turn. And if you decide to sell out now and give up on this, you will run the risk, the very serious risk of missing out on the market as and when it turns. It will do. I can't tell you when, but it will turn. And I think if you miss out on something like the top 30 days over the past 50 years, you have lost out on a huge, something like 50% of the growth in the market during that time. You've got to stick with it. And that's why it's important to have a long-term strategy. So there was one occasion when I got it badly wrong for a client, and this was not taking a high risk.
Really?
A dear elderly lady had done so well out of Royal Bank of Scotland shares, and her portfolio was hugely biased, overweight in these shares.
Right.
But I was reluctant to sell it down because of the capital gains tax that it would have provoked and caused her. And getting the timing right of a sale, particularly when you are obliging the client to pay tax, is damnably difficult. Because if you don't get it right within a year, they'll lose patience. If you caused me to pay all this tax, and even though we discussed it at the time, I'm still not happy that you did that. So I said to her, I'm keeping these, but I'm not happy. I'm uncomfortable with it. And she said, oh, don't worry about that. And of course, Royal Bank of Scotland, blue-blooded bank. Surely nothing could go wrong with that. And in the banking crisis, by golly, it did. It went down in value by 95%.
Was it?
Which was an absolute shocker.
Wow. And because she was so biased towards it caused a huge
disastrous impact.
Was it a big portfolio as well?
Well, because of this one particular shareholding, yes. So something go from 300,000 to 15 grand.
Oh my God.
In a couple of years was very, very uncomfortable.
So what was her reaction then?
She had someone else advising her on other investments. And of course, then that other person looked at the portfolio and said, well, that's the trouble of investing in directly in shares. If you invest in funds, then you really won't have that. Which was true in a sense, but he was not hamstrung, as I was, by the capital gains tax weight millstone around the neck. And I never forget someone saying to me, if you never try and catch a falling knife in the stock market. Well, that's very true, because your hands get skewered. But another way of looking at it is, what's the definition of a stock that falls 95%? It's one that falls 90%. You then buy it, and it halves again in value. And that is just awful if you look at it like that. Anyway, that was a disaster. And I lost the client. Unsurprisingly. My relationship with her, which was very, very cordial, very respectful, did not survive that
wonder
shocking occasion.
if she's watching now.
No, she's dead.
Oh, right.
Poor lady. But I hope I didn't.
Cool. Contribute in any way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't.
Well, okay, so that's great for you to share that. What about a success?
A real success was with a solicitor providing an elderly client again a service where his contribution 2 plus my contribution 2 added up to 5 for this client, because he had power of attorney for her. She was looking at a huge inheritance tax bill because her portfolio was very large.
Yeah.
And we took a considered risk for her in investing in a product which was going to help on inheritance tax purposes.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, anything with tax benefits must be a successful investment.
Sure.
For it to work.
Yeah.
And too often I have seen people invest in tax advantageous investments and products which have turned out to be useless investments.
Yeah.
And that's very disappointing.
Yeah.
But for this lady, it worked really, really well.
Yeah.
And she wasn't terribly aware of what was going on with her investments because she was in her 90s.
Yeah.
And we took a risk because of her age to do this. We thought, well, yeah, I think we'll do this.
How old was she?
Oh, in her 90s.
Right.
I thought I'd just mentioned that. Did I just mention that?
I can't remember if you said how old she was, but yeah. I know she's no longer around.
She was in her 90s, in case you didn't pick that up.
90.
And she died 4 or 5 years later. But
yeah.
I said to the solicitor, and we agreed that in professional life, there are times when you get things right for somebody who is a nice person, and you really want to succeed for them.
Yeah.
And it turns out brilliantly.
Yeah.
And indeed, some of her beneficiaries were incredibly grateful for what we did. And that's professionally so rewarding and makes up for the other stuff.
Yeah.
And there are other times when I've done some of my best work for nothing.
Yeah.
Just going the extra mile and doing something for which I got paid bugger all.
Yeah.
But it was...
That's it, is your job is ultimately so down to the relationship you have with the client.
Absolutely it is.
And
with the private client.
In that sense, you know, what I do and what you do has had very similar or crossovers in a sense, isn't it? I advise people on when it comes to their health and their training.
Yes.
You advise people when it comes to their finances.
Yes.
But ultimately, it's built off a relationship.
Absolutely.
And
it is.
if they trust me and they trust you, they're going to continue on with you.
Yeah.
So similar, you could say, for me, if a client doesn't suddenly see results, do they suddenly stop working with me?
Yes.
It's one of these ones, or do they actually be like, no, okay, why haven't I seen the results? Probably because I haven't worked hard enough, or I'm not fully committed to this whole process.
Yeah.
And it's probably with you similar in that they may not see results straight away and profits, but again, if you trust the process and you give it time, it will generally work out in a positive way.
Quite right.
So there are some, I suppose there are some similarities there. Now, your dad also gave talks at school. You gave one to...
I did, yeah.
To
at
my...
Tunbridge.
You did one to my year group, didn't you?
Yeah,
I do remember.
2 at Tunbridge, one at Eastbourne College and one at Rendcombe College in Gloucestershire.
Yeah, okay. And so we, certainly at school, I actually... Had it have been a subject at school, would I have done it? I don't know. I mean, was it something I was interested in? I'm not sure, but certainly looking back at it now, I would have loved to have had it as a subject.
Yes,
I
would suggest. In answer to that point, it should not be a voluntary matter.
No, it should just be
It should be a general studies thing.
Yeah.
Both at school and at university or tech or wherever you go.
Yeah.
But school, to catch a number of people who don't go on to university.
Yeah.
It's such an important life skill, and it just isn't part of the curriculum.
No.
And amongst other things, it is so important and should be on the curriculum. So when I was doing talks at schools, it was trying to instill some basic understanding of what goes into saving, what responsibilities come with becoming an adult, going out to work, earning money and putting some of it aside for later life.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to go into specifics here because there are plenty of people watching of different age groups.
Yeah.
But I would say to parents of young adults or school children, pull every string you have to get your child some sort of exposure to financial intelligence.
Sure.
Ask the school what they do to provide basic training in investments, in pensions, in savings.
Yeah.
And
what I can tell you now, I mean, I had zero.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And probably most, I don't know what it's like now at school, but I probably imagine it's the same. I haven't heard anything that's changed.
I think that's very true,
And
it's why we went out into schools. There were several of us who did it.
Yeah.
And to provide this information,
Yeah.
it is, I think, so important.
It is. I think a big issue, though, is a problem, not the big issue,
No.
but a big issue, is it can seem
We're
quite,
rumpling up the carpet.
we
by
are
the
a
way,
bit.
so it's better.
It can come across as very boring.
Yeah.
And that's where it has to be jazzed up a bit, make it enjoyable for people that are listening in.
Yes.
It's the same, right now with people tuning into this. I want it to be educational, this sort of episode, but also equally light-hearted and then somewhat entertaining, because
It's
it
a
can
subject
be,
that may not be full of a huge amount of laughter.
No, well, indeed, but it's something that for kids when they're younger, they want to enjoy. It needs to be something that does, I don't know, get their attention.
Yes.
And because you're talking about something that is only really important for them when they come out of school, you could say it's when they begin to make decisions themselves. That's sometimes kids don't think ahead like that. They're just like, I don't need to worry about that now.
Yeah,
So therefore
they don't have to worry that they don't really necessarily understand the sacrifices that their parents may have had to make to send them to school.
Yeah, exactly.
Particularly if the parents are chosen fee-paying schools.
Yeah.
The fees from which are now astronomical.
It's nuts, isn't it? It's absolutely ridiculous.
I mean, but having said that, the product is remarkable. And it'll be interesting to see how, if a Labour government comes in next year, what they do with private schools. That's a completely different matter.
Yeah.
But trying to make it fun is a challenge.
Yeah.
I went to give one talk at a school, and I subsequently overheard one of the masters at the school talking to one of my colleagues at a lunch.
Sure.
And they'd both had a drink or two, and I sort of was earwigging a little to what they were talking about.
Eavesdropping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I really, the more they went on, the more I thought, gee, this is a familiar conversation. And one was saying, the master at the school, some of the pupils just nodded off. They weren't terribly interested at all. And my colleague then said, well, you don't want old Etonians with double-barreled names to come in and talk about that sort of thing. That's not going to help either. And I thought, they're talking about me.
Yeah.
I don't have a name long enough to be hyphenated and double-barreled. I've got 3 letters in it.
Yeah.
And B, I'm not an old Etonian.
Yeah.
I thought I did really well on that occasion. Now, they had had a drink or two,
Sure.
and it wouldn't
Often
have
the truth
surprised.
comes out.
Well,
doesn't it?
yeah,
Or there.
they'd reached the stage where if they'd had another glass of wine, they would have probably left an atrocity on the dining table, which would have been shocking.
Yeah.
But I thought, wow, are my presentation skills that bad? I was really concerned about it. Anyway.
Yeah. Did you jump into the conversation?
No, I didn't.
No,
I just said to the lady I was talking to, I think they're talking about me.
And was she asleep at the time when you?
No, she tittered politely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
anyway, we may have lost a few viewers already.
We could. Wake up, everybody.
Still here. Yeah.
No, but it's such an important subject, and general advice: start saving early.
Yeah.
Put money aside. Don't spend everything that you're earning.
Yeah.
Because what you set aside now, no matter how small it is, has the chance to grow for 30, 40, 45 years. 40, 45.
Keep going. I'm just going to stoke this a little bit.
Yes, please do.
Yeah.
And that is where, and here is a quote for you.
Here we go.
Albert Einstein said, this is true because I've looked it up, I didn't believe it when I first heard it.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful forces in the universe is that of compound interest.
Go on, yeah.
Which is where you leave your returns, your investment returns, in place.
Yeah.
So investments provide either interest and or dividends, or dividends, plus capital growth, you hope. And if you don't take that out of the portfolio and you just leave it there, then the compound interest adds up.
Sure.
So after 10, 20 years, you're really getting a great return.
Getting some pretty mega
and
stuff.
rather like a house that you mentioned earlier, you're not taking money out of that.
Yeah.
And if you were to look at your house purely as an investment, there would have been times over the past 35, 40 years that your person you quoted as buying a house in London in the 60s for £3,000, there would have been times when, if that was purely an investment, the pressure upon selling because things looked awful would have been enormous. So it's all very well saying, these assets have produced wonderful returns. But sometimes it would have been absolutely right to have your head in the sand. And just do nothing. Because coming back to those few days when the market rocketed back into popularity, if you miss out on them, you're stuffed.
Now, I wanted to have a bit of fun with this. Okay.
Yes.
So
look out, everybody.
If you were given, I want your sensible answer.
Yeah.
And I want your just put sense to one side, or sensible, just be as extravagant as you like. If you were given 250 grand.
Yeah.
So not a
$500,000. Let's say.
Well, no, because I've done it as 250 because it's not a life-changing amount of money.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
It's a very nice amount of money, but it's not life-changing.
Yeah.
What would, right now, in this world we live in, sensible choice first, what would you do with it? And what would be your advice?
I would have, I'm sorry, this is going to be a rhetorical answer, but I would have to ask more questions
that's very
about
good.
your priorities in life.
Okay. But you right now, so let's say you
if it was for me,
what would you do?
Aged 64, will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64?
Yeah.
I would tend towards continuing to be sensible. I'm in the latter period of my life, and I wouldn't be
just knocking a few. You need to push on
taking
to 100.
the odd single to deep extra cover. And ambling that single. I would be wanting to err on the side of caution rather than risk.
Sure.
and I would put money into low risk investments, which for the first time in 10 years or so are offering a half decent return
Yeah.
of 5%.
Yeah.
Now, the fact that that is still less than inflation, and you're getting an inflation adjusted negative return,
Yeah.
doesn't bother me that much.
No. No.
At my stage of life.
Yeah.
I would absolutely include other assets. So equities, which is shares.
Yeah.
And I think if I was looking at a life stretching out in front of me another 25 years, which would be lovely to think, but let's use that as an assumption.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would also like to include some alternative investments, say some fine wine,
Okay.
which
Nice.
is not subject to capital gains tax because it's a wasting asset.
Yeah.
I might put in a classic car.
Nice.
I might buy some
Tax
gold.
efficient. Art.
Possibly, but I'm not so interested in that.
Yeah.
I like to have, if I'm going for investments that are a bit off the wall,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
then I think one has to be interested in them.
Yeah.
With wine, you can drink it. With
Yeah, but you don't. But then that's not an investment then, because you're using it and it's gone.
Yes, sure.
Whereas a car, you still.
But that's your downside.
Yeah.
That's the worst you can do is drink your wine.
Yeah. True. True.
Rather than it being a great investment.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as an example, one of the wines I bought for Bertie a few years ago now, a nice case of champagne for 250 quid, and we are going back 20 years, is apparently now worth $2,500.
That's very nice.
Which is, as an alternative investment, fabulous.
It's pretty good.
Now, that's the only one
He's
that's
going to
done that.
Pop them and spray them. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. Anyway, alternative assets, just coming back to the point, I think you have to be interested in them.
Yeah,
Classic
definitely.
cars.
Definitely.
They're not capital gains taxable, but you've got to understand the obligations, the financial obligations
100%.
of storing them,
100%.
keeping them in beautiful, dry conditions, polishing them, starting them up, running them, but not adding too many miles to them.
Yeah.
But these are various other assets.
Yeah.
There are higher, we'll come on to the higher risk in a minute, but I would only set aside 50 grand to these alternative assets. I'd probably have 75 in lower risk investments.
Okay.
And the other 125 in, I hope that adds up, equities. But that's what I'm familiar with. That's my comfort area.
Yeah. Okay. So
higher risk.
Yeah. So that's no, because it's good. I think it's very interesting. But equally, so people, let's say my age, who maybe are coming into potential inheritance or money that's given to them for whatever reason, parents passing on or hopefully not, but maybe grandparents passing on, and you're left a bit of money.
Yeah.
If someone hasn't had much money and they live by hand to mouth, and suddenly a ton of money lands in their account, let's say, well, as I said, 250 grand.
Yeah.
There would be a huge temptation to spend it in some way rather than invest it.
Yeah.
So with that being said, what would be your more high risk approach to that money?
Well, I think again it's important to contextualize this.
Yeah.
Because for a youngster,
it's very different.
Someone below 35, let's say.
Yeah.
I think it is far easier and more appropriate to take risk.
Yeah.
Because you can afford to buy something for it to go down in value, but you've still got the time for that to recover.
Yeah, very true.
And you don't invest money that you can't afford to lose.
Yeah.
So if you were inheriting that 250,000 and you thought, I really would like to set that aside for a house, I would say absolutely get professional advice on it.
Yeah.
But setting aside money for a house, you want to know that it's going to be there. You don't want to invest in a higher risk investment
Yeah.
or series of investments.
Yeah.
Stock market tank,
Yeah.
and you've only got 150,000
Yeah.
to buy your house with. That would be disastrous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if there is a need for the money within the next 5 years, say,
Sure.
I would say go safe with it.
Yeah.
If you have an inclination and an ability to set the money aside and not worry about it
Yeah.
for at least a decade,
Yeah.
then you can afford to take a bit more risk.
Yeah.
And you could say, right, I'm going to put 200,000 into sensible stroke higher risk, so medium to higher risk.
Yeah.
And then with the other 50, I'm going to have some fun. If you wanted to buy art or wine or a fast car, then make sure that it's not solely a depreciating asset. If you have mates who are starting up a business and you would like to support them, you agree with their business premise and plan and say, yes, I'm going to support this, and say, I'm going to invest 20,000 in you, then by all means go ahead.
I like that.
But I think it's very, very important to get parental advice, because your parents know you better. And if not, then get professional advice from someone who is actively recommended, because they will come with trust. You have someone who I would be very happy to recommend.
He's very
I've
good.
been out of the business for 5 years now, and in that time I know I've lost a bit of an edge in knowing what's out there.
Sure.
I can still offer general
wisdom.
advice. Exactly.
Definitely.
So I think it's very important to get professional advice,
And it's context,
and not to blow it, not to think, well, hey, this is $250,000.
Talking of which, I saw a story. It was very recently. A guy who he won the lottery, and it was, I can't remember how many million he won, but he went and spent it all at I think it was Centre Parks or something. He went and just went to town. It was about a 5-6 day bender, and there was a news article done, and he had no regrets and was like, this was the best thing ever, and now we're just going to go back to living our normal life. They lived in paradise for but I remember reading that, and I was like, it was like hard to read. I was like, how can someone do that? I mean, each to their own, go for it, but to suddenly like
and I can't
that sort of money.
I can't tell people to be sensible. This is,
No.
as you've said before, this is not a funny, humorous episode.
No.
But on that same subject, I remember doing a school talk when somebody came up to me afterwards, and one of the pupils, and said, actually, one of the chaps sitting next to me, his parents have recently won the lottery, so he doesn't have to worry about things.
Wow.
So he rather switched off.
Wow.
Well,
yeah, but you could.
Good luck.
Still, yeah.
Good
exactly,
luck with that.
Exactly. So let's go on to something that's a little bit, is quite a controversial subject.
Yes.
Is gambling.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people resort to that because of the adrenaline, the serotonin release you get when you win, that addictive side.
Is it serotonin?
I think it's serotonin, that amazing feeling you get of
endorphins, or
release of endorphins, exactly. When you win something, it's just
anyway.
an amazing feeling, and people get addicted to it. But my God, it can become dangerous.
Yeah, it certainly can.
And it's something I'm very pleased I've never ever got into. The most I think I've ever put into a machine was a fiver, or not even that. I think I've ever actually put a note in a machine. I think it's always been coins. Yeah. So I can't bear the thought of putting in some money and then it just being down to luck as to whether it goes one way or the other.
I'm the same, but
But
one only has to look at the money spent by the gambling companies on advertising, on television, on the front of Premier League football shirts, to understand that they're the ones making the money in the gambling industry. It's not the punter. The punter, of course, has an opportunity, and some will succeed overall, but it's all or nothing with gambling. I think one, and this is where there's a slight crossover with investment management. Because gambling, let's say you put a forecast on for 7 races at a meeting. And you've got 6 of them right. And before the final race, you go to the bookie and say, "Do you want to? I'm interested in what you'd quote me for cashing out." Because if I win this next race, you're going to owe me 50 grand. If I lose, I'm going to get nothing. If I cash out now, would you give me 15 to 20? That sort of risk, you can you can trade on the stock market.
Yeah, it is a gamble, isn't it? It is a form of gambling.
It is, but mostly with betting, you're betting on a specific outcome. And you know what your odds are. You're either going to win that or you lose it.
But they're always against you, I find. In gambling.
Probably.
Majority of the time. I mean, it's
probably. I mean, there are people who advise on it. And they may well make money out of it. But as far as I'm concerned, I've never have. Never been tempted to gamble big time.
No, we're lucky. None of us do. I don't know that many people that do it either. But it is you see the thrill of it, and you hear places like Vegas and all these incredible places that just live off these casinos.
And the whole hope of winning something big.
Exactly.
And it's interesting. I would look at some of my colleagues in the investment management business who did enjoy gambling. And they brought that similar attitude
to the workspace.
Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, true.
Because when I bought something and it went down pretty quickly, bought something for clients, I would think, "Oh, God, this is dreadful. I'm useless at what I'm doing." Now, the worst thing I could do was go into my shell and not do anything and just be apologetic. And some clients would say, "Please don't worry, just crack on and carry on with what you're doing. That's what I pay you to do." And these other guys who liked gambling, it wouldn't affect them at all. They'd just carry on. And that was something that perhaps I took too seriously in my profession, was the feeling of losing. Which is why I think it is much more important to have a balance of investments rather than put too many eggs in one basket.
I think that's a very good point. Are you a believer in the phrase "work hard, play hard"?
No, I don't think I am.
Okay.
Because I just don't have the energy to do it now.
No.
Once upon a time, I probably did.
Work hard, try and
but
play
the
hard.
work hard was always there. The need for that, to be able to turn up at the office every day. Only once did I come back to the office paralytic. And I couldn't focus on my screen. This was when I was in my 20s.
All over the shop.
Going back, it was awful. I was sitting there grinning, waving at colleagues in the office and "How are you doing?" And I couldn't answer the telephone. And I said to the colleague who'd covered for me at lunch, "I'm terribly sorry, but I'm going to have to go home. I cannot work. It's dangerous." So off I went, and I thought, that will never happen again.
And you kept your job. You didn't get fired for that?
No, I didn't. My direct
Surely
boss
that would
was,
get you fired now.
Yeah, I think it would.
So. Just a slap on the wrist.
But it's still surprising that there are occasions when management, I know this has happened, when management have to send round an email, and it was applicable to people of my vintage, not me specifically, but saying, please go and have a nice lunch and entertain clients, but please do not come back to the office unless you would be fit enough to drive a car.
Nice, like that.
Which is, sometimes even people in the late stages of their career need reminding of that. It was just not great. So I work hard was always the important part. There was the odd bit of play hard, but fortunately I didn't have to spend long evenings week after week in the office. So, I didn't have the energy really to play hard. You don't when you're married with children. Weekends become very precious, and that's all family time. So, do you think it's bright enough in here on the screen?
Well, I'm hoping so. That's why I've directed this. That's because the fire's beginning to go.
Okay.
But we're kind of drawing it to an end anyway. So it's I think they're. I mean, I've gone through everything I wanted to ask you without going into too much detail.
Yeah. But I think
I like.
Go on. If we were to summarise without going into any detail, I know not everyone is comfortable with investment matters. And as Winston Churchill once said, slightly at a tangent, but I think it's very important, and there are parallels to be drawn. Even if you don't make books your friends, at least make them your acquaintances.
Okay.
And I think that applies to the investment world. You may not be really interested and enthusiastic about them, but investment matters are important, and just becoming acquainted with them is so very important. And it's where parental guidance to the younger generation really is important, with no embarrassments, sometimes investments and talking about money matters can be considered as being vulgar. Nothing of the sort.
No.
It's got to be talked about. You've got to be open with the next generation. It's such an important part of their education. And until it is included as a full-time part of the education system, it will continue to be a mystery to way too many people. So I just hope that
That's
this little
good.
discussion will help both my generation and your generation start asking a few more questions and imparting a bit more knowledge from me to you.
And younger generations as well.
Yes, absolutely. And if there are any questions that come out about this that you'd like to know a bit more about, I'd be very happy to answer them, and we could, have a little bit of a feedback session next time or the time after, so that you've got a bit of time to think about it. But I think it's I'd be very happy to do that.
Definitely, I like that. Well, so that's a nice way of rounding off. I think that's you provided a lot of advice and
very general.
But it's very good. It's very, very good, and I've learned so much from you as well over the past probably 10 to 15 years. When it comes to this sort of stuff.
Well, you're lucky having me around.
Yeah.
I was lucky having my father around. And I tried to extend it at work in schools. I didn't manage university, but at schools it's really important to sow the seed from 16 years onwards.
But yeah, no, it's really, really good. And one more thing as well, guys, please do send in your Christmas related questions. We will be doing a Christmas special.
Is Santa Claus real? That's one that...
That's a good one. That is always a good one. We'll see. It'll be interesting to see how you answer that. But yeah, we've still got a few more episodes before the Christmas special. But yeah, please do send it in. We want to go bigger and better than we did last year. And yeah, we would like it as any questions that you have for us, please do fire them over.
Yep, you bet.
So yeah, I suppose that is episode 4 of season 2. Over and out.
Excellent.
All
Thank
good?
you very much, everyone, for watching.
Yeah.
And we very much look forward to seeing you next time.
Indeed.
It'll be the pre-Christmas edition, I guess.
No, we've got another couple. So,
Yeah, okay.
Indeed.
Well
Well done.
lovely. Thank you very much.
Very good. As always. Hey,